At today's briefing, we're going to be releasing 3 officer-involved shooting review letters and their associated videos. I hope everybody shuts their cell phones off, and everybody get them off? Okay, thank you. We're doing so under the formalized officer-involved shooting evidence release protocol, which was signed by the Police Chiefs and Sheriffs Association last week. This is the first time we've had it formalized and are operating under that memorandum. Any broadcast that may be live streaming or broadcasting this news conference live, these are housekeeping. Please know that the videos contains graphic, violent content and strong language that's not appropriate for a general audience. Once the press event concludes, and I think actually you already have copies of the letters, but the videos will be made available. Based on the circumstances, the evidence, and the law, the District Attorney's review shows the officers' decisions to shoot in these incidences were reasonable and they bear no criminal liability for their actions. The law gives peace officers the same self-defense and defense of others' rights that each of us has. Peace officers may use deadly force to protect themselves from the threat of death or great bodily injury or others from such a threat. Officers also have additional rights because of the nature of their job. Peace officers may use deadly force in the course of their duties under circumstances not available to members of the general public. The law further recognizes that peace officers are often forced to make split-second decisions and judgments in circumstances that are tense, uncertain, and rapidly evolving. And that's exactly what the videos that are being released today reflect. Before we begin, a few reminders. The video evidence is exempt under the California Public Records Act. Our decision to release it does not otherwise waive that privilege. We do not plan to release any additional evidence from the investigatory materials at this time and continue to claim the privileges we are entitled under the law. As I mentioned, these videos can be graphic and disturbing to watch. The media has a responsibility to decide which portions of the video are ultimately broadcast and posted online. They also have a duty to put these videos into context. Presented out of context, a video clip can lead to incorrect and sometimes inflammatory narratives about an incident. With context, video evidence can aid the public in understanding why and how an officer-involved shooting occurred and build public trust in law enforcement. Pursuant to the release policy, we only release video that is relevant to our legal analysis of the shooting. In other words, the videos that show what happened in the moments or minutes before leading up to the shooting. The faces of the individuals are blurred out of respect for their privacy. And in general, the video will stop once the individual who was shot is no longer an immediate threat and no more shots are fired. The purposes, just to remind you, of the DA's review of officer-involved shootings is to provide an independent review and to assure the public that peace officers in San Diego County are performing their duties in a legally justified manner. Our review does not examine issues such as compliance with the policies and procedures of any law enforcement agency, ways to improve training, or any issues related to civil liability. So let's go to the first incident, is the fatal shooting of Joshua Sisson. This incident unfolded after Mr. Sisson had a 13-inch butcher knife to the throat of his companion and then choked the victim. Once Sisson dropped the knife, the victim called 911 and locked him outside of the residence. A San Diego police officer heard the radio call of a suspect who held a knife to a person's neck and responded. The officer arrived on the scene and saw a male matching the description of the suspect walking away from him. As the officer exited his vehicle, he called for Sisson to stop. The suspect continued walking away, but then turned to face the officer. The officer saw Mr. Sisson wearing a mask over his face and was armed with a large butcher knife in his hand. Sisson took a fighting stance, and the officer began to back away. The officer was holding his firearm in one hand and a flashlight in the other. He turned his body-worn camera on while he was backing away. For a second time, the officer told the male to stop. By this time, the officer had retreated to the rear of his police vehicle, and the male began to walk away. Concerned for the public safety, the officer advanced and ordered Mr. Sisson to drop the knife. Sisson turned toward the officer once again, switched the knife to the other hand, and took a fighting stance. Then Mr. Sisson took one or two more steps forward towards the officer. The officer estimated the distance was about 8 feet between himself and Mr. Sisson when he fired one round. A civilian witness to the shooting told investigators he heard the officer yell twice for the suspect to stop and saw Sisson's arm pointed at the officer. An autopsy revealed that Mr. Sisson had methamphetamines and amphetamines in his system. Mr. Sisson had a history of mental illness and violence. He had been convicted previously of 13 counts of premeditated attempted murder after he set a residence on fire with 13 people inside. At the time he set the house on fire, Sisson admitted he intended to fight with the police and wanted them to kill him. There are 2 videos of the officer-involved shooting, which are edited back to back. The first video you will see is from Able, the San Diego Police Department helicopter, which has the best view, followed by the body-worn camera footage from the officer. As with many officer-involved shootings, the incident unfolds rapidly, so we'll show it to you now. As you see, it goes by fast, so you will have copies, though, of the video so you can look at it again, and you can see that the Able video was better, of course, than the body-worn camera because of how it unfolded. The next incident is the non-fatal shooting of Felipe Vega. Vega had shot and killed 2 people 5 days before this incident occurred. San Diego Police Department Homicide Team 4 investigated the murders and had identified Vega as the suspect. An arrest warrant was issued, and officers throughout San Diego County began searching for him. On November 12th of last year, a San Diego PD officer located Vega's car and had it under surveillance. While the officer was waiting for backup to arrive, Vega entered the vehicle and drove away. Officers tried to stop the car, but Vega did not comply. He then led officers on a pursuit through residential streets and onto several freeways. Vega stopped his car in an apartment complex parking lot, but again refused to comply with officers and remained inside his car. Officers evacuated the apartment complex and fired pepper ball rounds through the rear window of Vega's car, which were ineffective. Officers positioned an armored vehicle behind Vega's car to prevent another pursuit and provide officers with cover while they negotiated with Vega. Vega eventually stopped talking to negotiators. After spending more than 2 hours trying to get him to surrender, SWAT officers approached the car. Vega got out of the car and reached towards his waistband with both hands, then quickly removed his hands and reached inside the car through the open door. An SDPD officer fired one shot through the closed passenger window, which struck Vega but didn't enter his chest cavity. Vega fought with a police dog and officers as they attempted to take him into custody. He was treated at the scene and transported to the hospital. After being treated for his injuries, Vega was booked into jail and ultimately pled guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder and gun use allegations. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The officer who fired his weapon was wearing a body-worn camera and activated it when he transitioned from his pistol to his rifle. However, he turned the camera off prior to the shooting, explaining later to investigators that he was concerned about the tactical elements of SWAT information that might be captured by the camera and eventually disclosed. A total, though, of 96 body-worn camera videos were downloaded from 42 different officers. Each of those videos were reviewed as part of this investigation. At least 6 videos captured audio of officers' commands of hands up, let's see your hands, and he has something in his hands. There are 2 sections of body-worn camera video being released today. The first shows officers approaching the vehicle to take Mr. Vega into custody, and you'll hear the shot being fired. Then there is an edit, and you'll see the moments leading up to the shooting from a second body-worn camera. The final letter and associated videos being released today involve an incident that occurred in El Cajon on January 16th of this year. At about 1:30 in the morning, El Cajon police checked the license plate of a red Toyota being driven by Jeffrey Sims. The records check revealed that the car had been reported stolen. Officers followed the vehicle without activating their lights or siren in order to wait for backup to arrive. After several blocks, Sims turned suddenly into a parking lot. Officers then attempted to initiate a high-risk traffic stop. A male passenger opened the rear passenger door, stepped out for a moment, and jumped back in the car. Sims sped away, and an officer activated his emergency lights and siren. Sims drove onto the interstate, reaching speeds in excess of 100 miles per hour. He exited the West Main Street off-ramp and turned onto South Pierce Street, which is a dead end. Officers followed the car to the cul-de-sac at the end of the street. Sims made a full counterclockwise turn in a circle. As the officer waited to see whether Sims would stop, Sims drove forward toward the front of the officer's vehicle, passing in front of it. At that moment, the officer's patrol car collided with the vehicle's front passenger door at a low speed. As the officer got out of his car, Sims drove in reverse and scraped the front of the patrol officer's car. Sims continued to reverse and turn the front of his car back towards the officer, who was standing alongside his vehicle. Sims' car was now pointing directly at the officer, who stood between Sims and the opening back into the South Pierce Street. The officer fired 3 rounds at the Toyota, and Sims drove forward, speeding past the officer. The officer chased after the Toyota and moved around to the driver's side of the Toyota. Sims collided with the front of another officer's patrol car arriving on the scene. Sims reversed, attempting to maneuver around the patrol car. At that moment, the officer fired 1 more round toward the driver. Sims rolled forward, but a California Highway Patrol vehicle arrived and blocked his path. It was determined that Miss Kelsey Hauser had been shot while she sat in the front passenger seat. One of Sims' dogs was also shot and killed during the incident. 2 other passengers and a second dog were not injured. Toxicology results showed that Mr. Sims had amphetamines, cocaine, and opiates in his system. The first video you'll see is from a business's surveillance camera. Again, this unfolds very quickly, and as in all the videos. It's difficult to see when the shots are actually fired. You'll see a passenger who was in the back seat exit the vehicle, comply with an officer's commands to get on the ground. The next video is dash cam footage from the officer's patrol car, which had been in pursuit of Sims and followed him to the cul-de-sac. The next video is also dash cam footage from a third patrol car that arrives on the scene. The final video is also a dash cam video from the Highway Patrol cruiser that ultimately blocked Sims in and was struck by Sims' car. As our 20-year officer-involved shooting report showed, these incidents often have several things in common, including how quickly they unfold and the prevalence of drugs in an individual's system. All of the three of these shootings, the individuals did not comply with the officer's commands. In two of the incidents, the individuals had illegal drugs in their system. And one of the incidents involved an individual with a documented mental health issues who had expressed a desire to die in a suicide by cops scenario. In addition to the videos, we're also providing you again with the copies of the letters that our office has delivered to the respective law enforcement agencies summarizing our review. And they're much more detailed about the facts and the evidence and why we reached the conclusions not to file criminal charges. I encourage the media outlets to include these letters alongside any videos that they might post online. And with this latest officer-involved shooting briefing, we are now caught up on the release of all the letters that have been completed and their associated videos.